I mean, we can get into it and just see where it goes. Like, I mean, like what I've been kind of thinking about, and as we also discussed, is like I'm just gonna jump into this. Have some faith that I'll have something that makes sense to do, and it actually makes a lot more sense because it's like when you're in a position, you actually feel what you should be doing next. Rather than just following that plan that you thought out in your head. So I think it's going to be interesting, and also there's something about that. It's such a lightness to kind of come to a class and just show up. You know what I mean? It's like it's probably the same with the podcast episode, right? If you would have to like plan it out and think about it and everything. Like you guys couldn't do all those episodes because it's like that would take so much energy. But just showing up, it's just so much lighter. So
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, that's like, and that's kind of like everything, right? Like the thought as you were talking, I was like, I had the thought of showing up to a podcast, like if we had some like outline of an episode, like how weird that would feel if like we're going to talk about, you know, acceptance or authenticity for the first 10 minutes, and then we're going to talk about, you know, Christianity for the next 15 minutes, and then we're going to talk about being yourself, and then we're going to talk about like needs for the last part, and all that cycle through. And I'm like, holy shit, that would be so different. But like a lot of times we'll still cover, like with everything, even in a conversation, like I'm getting much more of a appreciation for just like the lack of need for being in a linear conversation or like a structured conversation, and just kind of like relaxing and letting my mind kind of open up a little bit more to take things in different directions. Because I've found that if I'm trying to stay tense under control, it's like there's very little there. But if I'm relaxed, it's like there is that, like you were saying, like that next thing that just makes sense. Like the sensitivity is always there, and just the experience of showing up without having so much in mind. Like thinking of me showing up to like a class in high school, or like giving a speech or something, like I'd have fucking notes up the ass, like sometimes just straight up pre-written. And so it was like so prepared that it was basically done beforehand. Whereas how much lightness there is when it is just show up. But then it's like you kind of have to allow yourself to just be what you are and settle into like, being yourself, because that's just what you're going to do, versus like, I want to be a curated version the right way. And especially with yoga, like people will definitely feel that. I can imagine if there's like a super rigid, structured yoga instructor too, like that doesn't sound helpful for yoga.
No, no, not at all. Yeah. And I think it's more interesting as well to just jump into it because it's like, I feel that I rarely get anything out of it holding a yoga class, sort of, because I'm just so in my mind. It's just all about the sequence. It's like it's running in my head almost, like, the sequence. I was like, I gotta remember the next one. Oh, it's this one. And then in the beginning, it was like, when you take the class, it's like you get bonus points, like you're being judged, right? And it's like bonus points if you say like the Sanskrit name of the move and stuff like that. And you're not present at all. It's just going in the head like, oh, blah, 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 blah. I can't even remember any Sanskrit name now, but it's like, it is crazy. And it's like, it's almost like, the opposite of what yoga is about, I feel. It's like the training. But then again, it's like, I'm not sure if it would have made sense at that point to say like, don't prepare at all. It's like, I don't know. There's something about that period as well. Like I feel sometimes you got to learn something, right? Sort of, and you got to understand like maybe you're not so sensitive in the beginning, or maybe you are. Maybe we just get fucked by all the preparation. So we stop paying attention, and try to think it out instead, you know, and reading the book, you know, in the book it always says like, here's the exercise, you should do this exercise before and this after, like that's the perfect, you know, that's like, that's how it is. And you sit in the book and you read and you write, and you know, it's like, yeah.
Oh, for sure. It's almost like we're relearning sensitivity, just like from a broader point of view, I think. Like we're obviously super sensitive as kids, you know, super sensitive as babies. And that's the first time I've said it, and I've thought of it like in the emotional sense. Like someone says, "Oh, you're so sensitive," you know, is like a bad thing, you know, like, "Oh, toughen up." But like now I say sensitivity all the time, and I don't think of it like that it's like, oh, you're sensitive, you're like hyper impacted by things. But it's kind of the same thing. But as kids, like there was way more of that. And it's almost like it gets trained out of us, you know, like school cuts down, like it shreds our sensitivity. And so, like going into a yoga class, it's totally understandable why most people going into new things like look for a structure instead of like let it naturally play out. Because if over time, like the sensitivity is getting almost like trained out of us or pushed out of us, all we have when we get out of that, you know, system in our 20s is structure. It's like there's no sensitivity left almost. It's not to say there actually isn't, but to some degree. So it's like if there is no sensitivity, like you need structure. You know, like if there's zero sensitivity whatsoever, it's almost with like with running, like running shoes, like a lot of them are super thick, like so thick these days. And if someone like starts relying on that, they won't be able to go back to barefoot. But someone who starts barefoot could build and then like get used to that. So they could just run barefoot. Otherwise, someone's just going to always need that buffer, that rubber. And then if you realize that and you get rid of the buffer, then it's like there's going to be an adjustment period. And that's, it's like sensitivity is like a foreign thing, faith in ourselves, trust in ourselves. But like it's applicable to everything. And like that's what we take with us is our sensitivity and like faith in ourselves. So like again, something like yoga, being able to cultivate that. I can imagine going through a class like all the sequences just like cycling through nonstop, but that's a part of it too. Like with the podcast, even I used to take so many notes, like so many notes all the time. And then it hit me one day like, oh, wow, this is a crutch. This is a big crutch. So I started using it less, and I had a tough time. Like there would be times where I'd like not remember something or like wish I had written something down and didn't, because any like fleeting thought, I would write it down, you know, so I could keep it there just in case I forgot. Stop doing that. And I forgot sometimes, and I'd have to deal with that. And that was a whole new thing. But I don't know if I would have been able to go through the podcast early in the same way if I like told myself, oh, can't use my notebook at all. It's like I had to find that balance. I guess that's everything pretty much.
Yeah. And another thing with notebooks, I was in a meeting today, and I had this urge to kind of take up my notebook, you know, to just kind of be ready to write if there's something important. But it's like, why? Like, it's just going to take me away. And it's the only reason I wanted to do it was to like look like I kind of was prepared. That was 100% why I even considered to take it off. And I'm like, that's so silly. Like, can't I just be there and be engaged in whatever's happening, right? And I'm gonna remember what I need to remember, like if there's something. And I feel that's, yeah, there's so many like all these expectations and stuff like that. It's yeah, it's
Yeah, oh, yeah, it's interesting. And I picture even because I've done the same thing where it's like this indicates that I'm prepared, like having my notebook ready or something. But then if I were in a meeting and I saw like two people show up, one of them was just like no notebook, one of them had a notebook, but like the one without the notebook was like super involved, enthusiastic, attentive, whereas the person with the notebook was like, you know, writing stuff down, kind of there, kind of not, like, but like I would be like, wow, the person without the notebook is clearly more here. They're going to take more out of it. They're going to be more sensitive. But the notebook feels like a little more control, a little more structure, backup plan. But it doesn't actually guarantee anything. A lot of times can be like more of a crutch than a help. And again, like balance with everything. But yeah, over time, it's yeah, more and more faith in yourself you have, the less external stuff you need, like kind of period with everything.
Yeah. I think it really comes down to just trusting yourself and not being so worried if something goes wrong, like this yoga class here, it's like it's not like, I if I kind of don't know what to do next, like it'll sort itself out. It's like it's just this it's just these ideas we have that, like, if this goes wrong, then like everything is over. You know what I mean? It's like it's this weird yeah, I don't know if it's like something we build up ourselves only, or if it's like that's kind of what we're getting from society as well. I'm not sure. I think I built up a lot of that myself, like that fear, for losing a job or whatever. It's like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. No, you just got me thinking about, if say for that example, for yoga, someone gets, say, you do a yoga session and there's no hiccups whatsoever, kind of seamless. It's almost like you were unnoticeable. Like no one noticed anything. They were like, oh, if they thought about it, they were like, oh, he clearly did a great job because I didn't even notice that there was any hiccups. But when you look at like the world, humanity, people as like everyone's on this sort of like unknown spectrum of experience and assumptions, like if you were to, get to a point where you're like, all right, I was in a pretty good flow and I have no idea what to do next. And we just kind of took a pause and you're like, let's just lie on our backs for a little bit and breathe. Like, so there could be someone who listens to that, probably unlikely in DU community, and they're like, oh, what the heck? He's not following a structure or a flow. But most people would probably be like that could perfectly be in flow. Like missing the flow could be perfectly in flow, and it could be a perfect time for like a break or a breather or whatever. But like we put ourselves in there and assume that like, oh, I was too involved in myself and so I fucked everything up. But like that could have been the most appropriate thing. We just like double down on it. And so we never really know how someone's going to take something. But I was thinking how if it goes unnoticed and you never like do any hiccups or do any things like where you might be judged or someone might have a thought about it, it's like it goes unnoticed. But if you do something that might be judged, like, yeah, someone might judge it, but someone might also appreciate it. And so like in order to do something that even has the potential for someone to like not that it's for them or anything, but they may appreciate it, like there's almost an equivalent opportunity to be judged in situations. So like you're putting yourself out there, you're going without so much structure. It's like, yeah, you might get judged, but there's an equal and opposite potential to like be appreciated, versus if there isn't the opportunity to be judged, there's probably less opportunity for the, appreciation or for someone to take something from them. It's like someone gives a speech on a stage. It's like, yeah, they could be judged, but yeah, they can also probably connect with a lot of people. And there's no way to really know how you're doing that. Like in your eyes, fucking everything up could be perfectly appropriate for, someone else. Because it's like, what is really my goal at the end of the day? Is it for me to like be perfect all the time? Like, definitely not. That's as if that's even my idea of perfect in my head isn't even perfect. Like perfect's what happens, not what I assume should be happening. But
Yeah, no, I feel that. I was at a concert where it was called like a lying down concert, and that was kind of a thing. It's like it's kind of unique. I've never been to a concert where you're told to kind of lay down, before, so it was pretty cool. And I went in there, and it was a bunch of people, and we lay down on the ground, and I just closed my eyes, and they started playing. And I knew the two musicians there, so I was lying there and I was just listening, and it was just, for me, it was just the most incredible experience you can imagine. I was just lying there, and I just felt the whole room was just kind of, you know, it was everywhere, sort of. It was amazing, like from start to finish, in my opinion. And then I talked to like them afterwards, like after the show, and things like quiet down and stuff. And he like a lot of things had gone wrong, in that set. Like things weren't working, the electronics, like to the guitar hadn't been working, and like there was so much thing that had gone wrong in that set, and that kind of took them off balance, and different things happened. They had to go like acoustic, and kind of go, with a flute, like up to a different microphone than the one where they were sitting, and like everything changed. Like it was like it wasn't a planned concert, but I just heard how they were kind of talking about something that went completely wrong. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like it was amazing. And I think it's so interesting, that perspective, that, yeah, like how it is this, it's like it is perfect, it's just because it's different than the plan. Yeah, I just felt that was a very, like, a real life example of exactly this thing.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. No, that concert sounds incredible. And two, it just like shows how we don't really know what we're expressing, but like we almost want to be correct in our assumptions about ourselves or in what we're getting across, that like will almost invalidate someone for saying otherwise. Like I go through that all the time. If I'm singing karaoke and I think like, oh, that was terrible, and someone's like, hey, great job, man. Like, you're a fucking liar. And it's like, that's so
Yeah,
fucked
I'm
up.
exactly the same.
So
Yeah.
fucked up of me to assume that like I know better. And again, like almost making it about me. Because at the same time, like with karaoke too, it's like you beating yourself up when someone thinks you did a great job is like, it's just kind of a weird look, Like I'm starting to notice more and more how much like self-deprecation, self-judgment is just kind of like not like an easy way out, but it's just a way I think a lot of people try and buffer themselves or keep themselves safe, but
Mm.
also like totally cut themselves off from connecting with people, because it's still very, you know, egotistical in a sense to be like judging yourself. It's an avoidance tactic for sure, because it's
Mm.
like when you're judging yourself, you're not doing other stuff. You're judging yourself and like not helping yourself. But I
Mm.
find it really interesting when, and possibly that concert, that band, like hearing that everything went well, they were like, oh no chance. And we have
Yeah.
such a high bar for ourselves, but it's like, what are we trying to do? Like, what would their ultimate thing be? Like, would they rather it have gone perfectly and people not have as good of a time, or would they rather it not go perfectly and people have a better time? It's like, because you don't know how it's going to be. Like those are all question marks. It's like you
Mm.
don't have control of it, and that's the bitch. But
Yeah.
also not. It's like fucking freeing as shit.
Yeah. No, I gotta say, the thing about the self, like when people kind of give you praise for something, like I'm really struggling to, I think I've become better at least better at, like, not showing, how much I'm uncomfortable with it, but it's still in there, like 100%. I just want to do like this, when someone is kind of saying something nice, whether it's like, for example, the yoga class in the Netherlands, it's like when people were like, oh great, I'm like, of course it wasn't, it's like I just want to go hide, it's like it's so weird, and it's like I don't know. like even if people are telling me, I do not know, but it's like, yeah, oh, it's such a strange thing. Yeah.
It's and it's like because it invalidates your narrative. Like, because you're
Yeah.
not Levi in the way you're thinking of Levi. You
Mm.
know, you're not your narrative. You're not your individual story. But like, if I'm trying to protect that, if that's my ultimate thing, then like anyone who says anything that like invalidates that one side or the other, you know, because like you're telling yourself a story that you're a nice, good person, and someone's like, you're a fucking dick. You're gonna be like, well, no, blah blah blah, instead of like taking it in. And it's the same for it can be just as tough on the other side. Like, you did a great job at that. You have a, you know, you're a great teacher. You have a great voice. You have blah blah blah. It's like that can be just as jarring, as weird as it's like a compliment, because it's not the story you tell yourself. So it's just as invalidating to our own story. And so, you know, you go through enough of that and it's like, oh fuck yeah, I have this narrative about myself that's just straight up not me at all. But it's like, that's if that's where my focus is in validating that, like that's when I'm going to see everything through. Like
Mm.
being able, and you know, of course, that's something on podcasts we talk about a lot, with like just our narratives and our stories, and like the lack of control we have over what we're expressing or what someone's seeing. Even it's like you're seeing a version of me that I don't know. I'll never meet the Andrew that you're seeing, and you'll never meet the Levi that I'm seeing in my head. And it's like, my stomach kind of starts turning when I think about stuff like that. But it's also like,
Yeah.
so like, why the fuck not relax at that point? You
Mm.
know?
Yeah. Yeah. I've also, my stomach starts turning when you say that. It's not true. It's like, yeah, of course it's like that. But it's
Yeah.
uncomfortable to think about.
It's like, oh shit, if that's the case across the board, then who am I to make any assumptions about anyone? It's like, it's really, if that's the case, then all my assumptions about some narrative, about situations, about stories, even narratives about situations, you know, like
Mm.
if I've had a number of times where like I'm telling a story or sharing something or doing something, and like it's going fine, but I start assuming that it's not. And then it's like, then that's in there along with trying to do something. And then it's like, it slowly can kind of like tumble into just like, all right, yeah, I don't even know where I am right now, because it's even though it was going fine when I assumed that it wasn't, because there's such sensitivity to that, or like having an assumption about an episode and then going back and listening to it and being like, oh yeah, that's not really how I thought it went at all, like one way or the other. But a lot of times it's that made no sense and that was terrible. And then I listened back and I'm like, all right, maybe it kind of made some sense. And there's points where like I'll remember thinking about or saying something in a certain way and like, damn, that came out way different than I thought that I expressed it or whatever. And it's just like, oh, I don't know how it's going as it's going. Like, might as well, yeah, relax and pay attention. It's like, if it is so unknown, it's like, why not start there?
Yeah.
Well, this
Yeah.
has been a fun first chat. I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to more. You want to do
Yeah.
some questions? Okay,
Shall we get started then?
let's do it.
All right. I'll just grab a little water.
All right,
Oh,
sweet. So yeah, I'll probably clip it like right here, and then
yeah.